As we reach the 4th patch this season, there are still new builds being discovered revolving around the new Season 16 items, as we've got a few crazy Dusk and Dawn users, Hex Optics is a great rush on a bunch of ADCs, and Fiend Hunter Bolts is incredible on a champ we never really expected. So as always, we'll be breaking down 10 builds in today's video that are extremely powerful and that should be played a lot more in solo queue. And remember, if you're learning new tech, broken builds, or macro and wave control strategies from videos like this one, you're already behind. The issue with YouTube is that it takes a while for us to edit and get content out for you guys as fast as possible. That's why whenever our challenger players discover new tech, broken builds, or game-winning strategies, they post it immediately in our new meta updates course, weeks before you'll ever see it on YouTube, Reddit, or TikTok, so you can get ahead of everyone else. For instance, AP Vera's top lane was broken from the very first patch of the season, but the average player didn't discover that until a few weeks later, while SkillCapped subscribers were notified before everyone else. As a SkillCapped subscriber, you're also getting access to our newly updated Essentials courses, covering everything you need to master Season 16, from fundamentals to advanced macro, or even our Bronze to Diamond series, where we document hard-stuck players using only our content to climb through every rank. And if that wasn't enough already, every single week our challenger players upload 10 full game commentaries breaking down exactly how to carry games on your chosen champion in your elo, explaining every decision in real time. Best of all, you can get access to all of this and more completely risk-free, as if you don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using our service, then you get every penny back. Check out the link in the description below for an exclusive one-time discount completely risk-free today. So one of the best new builds up in the top lane for Season 16 that has yet to catch on a significant amount is Dusk and Dawn Shen. So Dusk and Dawn works great on Shen for a couple of reasons. The first is that Shen has 3 empowered autos with his Q, but because of the Dusk and Dawn passive, he's able to consume those 3 charges in just 2 auto attacks. Second is that you rush Titanic Hydra and then go Dusk and Dawn second, and since Dusk and Dawn applies on hit effects twice, you get more damage out of the Titanic Hydra's on hit passive. So the overall upfront burst potential of this 2-item core is pretty nuts, and we can see this demonstrated by the background clip where we are hitting a target dummy who would be the equivalent to an ADC in the mid game, and before they can even get out of your taunt, you'll have taken 75% of their health bar. The side lane threat of this build is incredible as well, because you have a lot of tower taking potential and a ton of 1v1 kill threat. But, well, you might be wondering, doesn't the AP from Dusk and Dawn just completely go to waste on Shen? That's not actually the case, because Shen's Q and R both have AP ratios. R is actually 135% AP ratio as well, so it's a very significant one. Analytically, this 2-item core of Titanic Hydra into Dusk and Dawn has a better win rate than anything else right now, so even though you're lacking a bit of tankiness, you can think of this build turning Shen into more of a true duelist instead of a fighter tank mix. So a really wacky new build has made its way onto Riven over the past patch, and it consists of taking Fiend Hunter Bolts as a core item. We always want to credit builds whenever possible, so when doing the research on this build, it looks like Challenger Riven main, who goes by TOF on X, is the one who discovered it first and was able to achieve a 77% win rate with the setup. Rush item remains Axiom Arc, and then you build into Fiend Hunter second. So there are a few reasons to why this build works so well, but the main one is that by going Fiend Hunter, it allows you to max out on Jack of All Trades bonus damage. You need 10 unique stats from items in order to get the max damage from Jack of All Trades, and by going Doran's Blade, Axiom Arc, Lucidity Boots, Fiend Hunter Bolts, and a Cloth Armor, you reach those 10 stats to gain the 25 adaptive damage, which ends up giving you 15 AD, since every point of adaptive damage is worth 0.6 AD. You can actually get the 10 stacks even earlier on in the game without even having to complete your Fiend Hunter Bolts item fully, as a Zeal plus a Cloth Armor is going to provide you with the 10 stats. The second reason this build works so well for solo queue specifically is because of all the ultimate ability haste you're getting, which heavily amplifies consistent skirmish power. Axiom Arc gives you 20 haste from stats alone, and then refunds 17% of your R cooldown on takedowns. Add on Fiend Hunter and you get another 30 ability haste for your R cooldown, so uptime on R is insane with this setup. To round out the core, you'll look to build into Death's Dance, so a complete 3-item core consisting of Axiom Arc, Fiend Hunter Bolts, and Death's Dance is what you'll want to try for 26.4. So a new off-meta champ who has been finding a lot of success over the past patch with a really unique build is Nasus Jungle. Nasus Jungle in itself is a pretty cool pick, but the build he's running is completely different than what you see in top lane. So the rush item is going to consist of Protoplasm Harness, and this has been the most underrated item on Nasus all season long. The reason Protoplasm works so well for Nasus is because his R provides him with bonus armor and magic resist, while the passive heal from Protoplasm scales off your bonus resist. So compared to other champs, you get way more value out of Protoplasm's heal. Where things get really silly is when you eventually pick up Jokshow, as you'll go Iceborne Gauntlet 2nd and Jokshow 3rd. Jokshow's passive is going to increase your bonus armor and magic resist by 30% once you're in combat for 5 seconds, so you're getting even more resist to amplify the Protoplasm Harness passive heal. It's not just the build that's making Nasus jungle stronger for this season though. Since ganking is a lot harder with Phaelite warding locations, it's less likely the enemy jungler will snowball on you before you're able to get a bunch of Q stacks and scale up. Nasus is also a really strong counterpick into a lot of auto attack reliant junglers, as he's been winning a ton into Viego, Xin Zhao, Jax, and Diana over the past patch. With junglers taking less damage while clearing their camps in Season 16, that is also so big for Nasus jungle, because in the past, he was really susceptible to early invades, but not so much now with the Season 16 changes. So overall, many different reasons to why Nasus is a viable jungler right now, and if you're bored of the same old meta, then look to pick him up in 26.4. So we covered the Zeke's build on Naafiri mid lane in our 26.3 edition of the OP builds video, but there's a new variation that is finding a bunch of success in Naafiri jungle as well. So Naafiri jungle has been popping up with a 2-item core that consists of Axiom Arc and Zeke's Convergence. Similar to the Riven build we featured earlier, this one provides a ton of ability haste for your R cooldown. Naafiri is a jungler whose skirmish strength is pretty heavily tied to having her ultimate available, so the build really enables her to snowball games much harder. Total cost of the 2-item core is only $49.50, which is so much cheaper than a standard jungle build. Xin Zhao, for example, likes to build Sundered Sky into Black Cleaver, and that core costs 1,150 gold more at 6,100 total gold. You don't stop there though in terms of stacking ability haste, as Endless Hunger is your third pickup. The passive on Endless Hunger converts 10% of your bonus AD into ability haste, so once you get later on into the game, you're getting a disgusting amount of haste from this build. So a champion who has always been a more niche mid lane pick is finding a bunch of success with Dusk and Dawn right now, as it's Kog'Maw. Dusk and Dawn as a rush item on Kog'Maw is winning over 2% more than Luden's, so it's clear that it's the setup you want to be running right now if you're an AP Cog enjoyer. The complete 3-item core consists of a Dusk and Dawn rush into Shadowflame 2nd and Rabadon's 3rd. Now for the rune page when running this build, you actually want to take Press the Attack instead of Comet. Comet has always been the default keystone for AP Kog'Maw in the past, but because you can proc PTA in just 2 auto attacks when running Dusk and Dawn, the value of the rune shoots up a bunch. The idea behind PTA is that you activate your W, auto attack the enemy twice to proc PTA, and then follow with your abilities so that they benefit from the bonus damage amp of Press the Attack. And it's actually W max first that you want to be playing when going for this build, because you do want to be auto attacking a decent amount due to Dusk and Dawn and Press the Attack. And to show you guys just how powerful this build can actually be, here's a test clip on a target dummy who has the same amount of health and resist that an ADC would have in the mid game. If you land 2 autos from W and follow with all your spells, then you're going to 100-0 that ADC as long as they don't have any other additional resists from items. And then a second mid lane champ who's really powerful but underrated with Dusk and Dawn right now is Fizz. So Fizz players rushing Dusk and Dawn are winning at a higher rate than any other item. It's actually the exact same 2-item core that we covered for Kog'Maw that is performing the best on Fizz as you go into Shadowflame 2nd. So why would you build Dusk and Dawn over Lichbane on Fizz then? Well, Lichbane is still going to win out in terms of raw burst power. However, there are many other perks that Dusk and Dawn has over Lichbane. You get 350 health, 10 more ability haste, and 25% attack speed. So with that in mind, those are the kind of stats that are going to suit you much better if you're playing into a comp who lacks squishy targets. If the enemy team has fighter champs in top, mid, and jungle, then going for Dusk and Dawn over Lichbane makes a ton of sense. You'll need a slightly more extended fight to take down bruiser champs in skirmishes, so that additional health and attack speed are going to help you out a bunch in that regard. So Hex Optics C44 is the item to pay attention to in 26.4 because it's receiving 2 pretty big buffs, and one champ who you most definitely need to be running it on is Caitlyn. So Hex Optics versus the Collector is going to be a big debate moving forward, but with the buffs to Hex Optics for this patch, we think there's a legit case to be made for you to slot it in as a rush and drop the Collector completely. The only reason that you would build the Collector over Hex Optics is because of the lethality that it provides, so that you have more snowball power early on. But when doing some testing in Practice Tool, what we found is pretty interesting. Comparing Hex Optics damage to the Collector's damage against a target dummy who has 1300 health and 50 armor, which would be very similar to what an ADC would have at level 8, this is what we found. Hex Optics is dealing more damage per auto attack, and even if you were to use EQ and an auto attack, you're still dealing more damage with Hex Optics. So the fact that Hex Optics is dealing more damage on one item and it's going to scale better into the late game makes it way better than the Collector. In 26.4, the range requirement for you to gain the maximum damage amp from Hex Optics passive is going down from 600 to 500. Since Kate has an auto range of 650, you may not think this matters for her, but when you factor in that you won't be able to space perfectly away from your opponents at all times, it most definitely positively impacts Caitlyn as well. Prior to the 26.4 Hex Optics buffs, the item was already winning over 1% more than the Collector as Caitlyn's rush item, so based on the data and and on the testing we've done, Hex Optics really seems like the no-brainer rush for Kate moving forward. A second ADC who you should look to try out Hex Optics as a rush item on for 26.4 is Jinx. So Jinx has been played with Hex Optics as a third item to pretty good success in recent patches, but the item as a rush is going to be a great option now too. The fact the range requirement for the bonus damage amp is going from 600 to 500 means that Jinx can now benefit from the passive even when she's auto-attacking in her minigun form. Even throughout 26.3, before the buffs to Hex Optics, it was winning the most for any rush item on Jinx, so it's clear people are really sleeping on the item right now. The only major downside to Hex Optics compared to Yuntal is that Yuntal does offer attack speed, so if you're rushing Hex Optics, then your second item is going to be Phantom Dancer. Hex Optics into PD second and Infinity Edge third is the core you'll want to try on Jinx for 26.4. Where Hex Optics would make the most sense over Yuntal as a rush on Jinx is when you are paired up with a melee engage support. Melee engage supports like Nautilus, Leona, or Blitzcrank can deal a good chunk of damage themselves, so by running Hex Optics, you'll have more ability damage relative to Yuntal, so following up and bursting targets that your supports engage on will be stronger. If you're paired with an Enchanter though, then it does still make a lot of sense to prioritize Yuntal or Kraken Slayer for the early game attack speed. A new Senna build has emerged over the past patch and it consists of taking Dusk and Dawn as a rush item. Dusk and Dawn has some pretty nice synergy with Senna because when you use your Q on an enemy instead of needing to auto attack after that to grab a passive stack, simply using Q will grant you that stack. So the ability for you to stack your passive consistently is a lot better with Dusk and Dawn. It's still going to be an Enchanter oriented build after rushing Dusk and Dawn, as Echoes of Helia second and Whispering Circlet third is the core you're working toward. Since you do want Whispering Circlet eventually, it is important to remember to grab a tier on your first base to get that stacking. So overall, you've got a little more solo carry power with this setup as opposed to just going all out Enchanter Senna. And then one more build to round out the video is going to be another support who's really underrated with Dusk and Dawn, and it's Bard. Dusk and Dawn makes a ton of sense for Bard because he's a champion who's going to be auto-attacking a ton in skirmishes, so he can take advantage of the Dusk and Dawn passive better than most champs in the game. It's a very selfish carry-oriented core for Bard as you're going for Dusk and Dawn into Liandry's second. And very important to note is that the Keystone rune working the best with this build is Press the Attack instead of Electrocute. You get PTA procced in just 2 auto attacks once you have Dusk and Dawn completed, so it's what you want to be running. So your catch and burst power is just substantially better than with any other setup on Bard, and you're still relatively tanky due to Dusk and Dawn and Liandry's providing 650 total health. You won't be quite as tanky as if you went for the standard Dead Man's Rush, but that's the trade-off for being able to deal significantly more damage, especially if you're in a game where your team is really lacking in magic damage. Let's say you've got a Renekton top, Viego jungle, and Yasuo mid, then going for this AP build on Bard is really good value. Alright guys, one last thing, our rank up guarantee is insane. It's like signing up for the gym and getting a refund if you don't get ripped. That's how confident we are in SkillCapped. We obsess over making the best guides with top players, rigorous testing, and top tier video editing to make your climb easy. If you're ready to level up, visit SkillCapped.com and see the difference. So there you have it everyone, those are 10 new builds that are incredibly underrated but extremely powerful for 26.4. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.